How's everybody doing? Happy Friday Life with Aaron back with you to talk to you today about Fairview, Kentucky. Now, what's important about Fairview? Fairview is a town of about 286 people, but one of its most famous sons is that of Jefferson Davis, the only president of the Confederacy. Jefferson Davis's father would actually settle in the area, Samuel Emory Davis, not to be confused with the Sam Davis that I'm also doing a video on, but Samuel Emory Davis, a hero of the Revolution, a part of many famous revolutionary battles in Georgia, would settle in the area and actually name it Davistown. It would later, after the Davis family moved, it would be named Georgetown after the owner of a local bar. And then finally in 1846, it would be incorporated as Fairview, the name that it has to this day. Jefferson Davis actually was born into a log cabin in the Fairview area, and it is the current location of Bethel Baptist Church. Now, this building that you see here is not the original building. In the late 1860s, townspeople came together and actually deeded the property back to Jefferson Davis. He, in turn, gave the property to the church to build their site of worship. That building stood until 1900. It was a Gothic-style church, and it burnt to the ground. And in 1901, the building that you see before you now was built, and this church still stands to this day. And even though the original Davis home is no longer standing, Jefferson Davis is memorialized in Fairview, unlike possibly anyone else in the country outside of maybe George Washington. And of course, I'm speaking of the 351 feet tall obelisk that honors Jefferson Davis, made of solid concrete with a base of limestone. To stand in front of it is pretty awe-inspiring. Now, the original idea to have a monument of its kind we attribute to Simon Buckner, the actual 30th governor of Kentucky and a former Confederate general. He first brought up this idea in 1901 at one of the Confederate veterans rallies around the area. Now, it would take all the way to 1924, and in the midst of World War I, would have to stop due to rationing. But in 1924, at a cost of $200,000, the obelisk was complete. In 1929, an elevator was installed in the monument itself, which is currently under repair. So if you go, you won't be able to actually go up in the monument. You can go in the base of it. And then from 1999 to 2004, they installed the current Visitor Center and Museum, which we'll show in just a second. The following shots take place on the first level of the memorial itself, and although the elevator, as I said, is currently not running, there's still some nice things to see. Now, as we move into the Jefferson Davis Museum, you'll notice a great selection of flags that were associated with the Confederate States of America. There's a great number, and not just the stars and bars, which most people associate with the Confederacy. The stars and bars was actually used to differentiate on the battlefield to prevent friendly fire that had been an early part of the war. This particular flag here is noted by a sign above it, was used for several Confederate veterans gatherings, but in actuality, it was a part of the war. And here we see furniture belonging to Jefferson Davis, including a life-size statue of Mr. Davis. And as we travel along the wall, we see the life and times of President Jefferson Davis. He was a United States Senator. He was Secretary of War under President Franklin Pierce. And he was a veteran of the Mexican-American Wars and was noted for his valor and for instituting certain military maneuvers that are used to this day. We see some of the styles of the time of Mrs. Davis. This museum is not large, but it makes up for it with an amazing array of artifacts. This was the uniform and weapons carried throughout the war by the 101-year-old veteran of the Confederacy, the last Confederate in Kentucky. So we leave you with the most recent addition to the museum. This very large portrait of Jefferson Davis was in Louisiana, and then it was moved to Georgetown University, and then finally here at the Memorial Museum in Fairview. If you get the opportunity to come here, I highly suggest that you do. Just standing in the midst of this obelisk, just looking what mankind can do when they put their mind to it. Pretty impressive. $6 per adult, very much worth the trip. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.